السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وأرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه وادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين آمين يا رب العالمين. Welcome everybody to our second part of the Fiqh of Salah, and I'd like to just invite everybody to come a bit closer, inshallah, so we can have some barakah in this majlis, inshallah. And again, we remind ourselves, it's very nice to see so many people come to the halaqat. We remind that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that whoever comes to these majalis of dhikr, of ilm, that when they leave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them, قُومُوا مَغْفُورًا لَكُمْ. Okay, you will leave with your sins erased, actually, and قَدْ بُدِّلَتْ سَيِّئَاتُكُمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. Right? Your sins will be exchanged with good deeds, inshallah. Inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exchange all our bad deeds with good deeds, inshallah. And we are here gathered to learn about really one of the main pillars of this deen, as-salah. And we talked about 2 weeks ago really the significance of this ibadah and how we should aim to make this ibadah what the Prophet ﷺ called جُعْلَتْ قُرَّةَ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ. Like the coolness of my eye is in the salah. Salah was something that he enjoyed. And so our goal, inshallah, is to make it something that we enjoy. طبعا the least that we're obligated to do is to do it properly, so it is accepted. That is the least that we need to take care of. And inshallah, once that is there, once it's established properly, we can try to improve it and to make it something that we enjoy, and that's something that we go to, something that we look forward to, not something that we want to get overdone with. Khalas, I'm done my salah, now I can relax. No, inshallah, we want to make it something. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make salah qurrat ayn for everybody here. Inshallah, today actually we're going to start with the ahkam of as-salah. So we're going to straight, and we said we're doing the book Akhsar Al-Mukhtasarat. It's a introductory or basic beginner fiqh book for the Hanbali madhab. Last week we had a nice long discussion about the madhab. We had our guest Adnan from Toronto visit us and give us more information about the salah. So inshallah we'll get started. Kitab as-salah. طبعا we said that we're going to be covering all these chapters today. Inshallah we'll cover the ruling of the prayer and inshallah the iqama and the adhan, and then the others we'll cover in the coming weeks. These are all the topics that inshallah we're hoping to cover, and then the chapter of al-janaiz. طيب. So the ruling of the prayer. طيب. Let me ask you guys, what is the hukum of salah? If someone asked you, طبعا this is from the things that we all should know as Muslims, what is the hukum of as-salah? What's the ruling of salah? It's wajib, it's fard on every Muslim. طيب, alhamdulillah. Anybody disagree? It's not something recommended. It's not something mubah. طيب. Jameel. طيب, so let's talk about the definition first. So we mentioned before that as-salah comes from the word sila. Also, Shaykh Adnan mentioned that it comes from the word, or it means what? Ad-du'a. Something important to know here is that when we say the definition of something, we say لغة واصطلاحا. لغة يعني linguistically, واصطلاحا يعني technically. You might say, I don't know what that means. Linguistically, every word has a meaning in the language, تمام, or goes back to a root word in the language, in the Arabic at least. And then we have something we call the التعريف الاصطلاحي, تمام, or the technical definition. يعني, what does it mean in that particular field? What does it mean in that particular field? يعني, for example, when I say hadith, what comes to your mind? Talk. طيب, you said talk. Any other opinions? Naam? Yeah, so some people say it's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Like in hadith, for the Arabs, they will say hadith, it just means talk. Okay? At-tahadduth is talking. Like in hadith, istilahan, in the science of hadith, it means it's a saying from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Same with as-salah. As-salah actually, the technical meaning with the Arab used to be ad-du'a. The Arab before Islam came, When someone said salah, يعني دعاء, يعني you call to someone. That's what it meant for the Arab, right? But what happened when Sharia came, it changed a lot of those meanings. فالزكاة used to have a meaning, a technical meaning for the Arab, okay? And then Islam came and made zakah what? An act of worship, where you pay 2.5%, after the hawl, if you reach the nisab. That's what Islam did. And the same thing with salah. Tamam? So when you hear, is it from salah? Is it? So the linguistic meaning now, we would say, it comes from the word salah, which means connecting. And the technical meaning used to be a dua, which is calling, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ in Surah At-Tawbah, وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ صَلَاتَكَ سَكَنًا لَهُمْ. يعني make dua for them. يعني أدعو لهم. صلي عليهم يعني أدعو عليهم. يا أدعو لهم. يعني إن صلاتك سكن لهم. Right? And the technical meaning that you find in the books of fiqh, أقوال وأفعال مخصوصة مفتتحة بالتكبير ومختتمة بالتسليم. Which basically means it's sayings, okay, and actions that are specific actions and specific sayings, right? We have at-takbir and all those things. مفتتحة بالتكبير. You begin with at-takbir, takbiratul ihram, takbiratul ihram, right? And it ends with ومختتمة, يعني it ends with at-taslim. Okay, so that's basically the technical definition of salah. That's what Sharia came and it brought this definition of as-salah. So now we know what we're talking about when we're talking about salah. We're talking about there are sayings, specific sayings and actions that begin with takbir al-ihram, Allahu Akbar, and it finishes with as-salam. طيب. Jamil. So the ruling, as you guys said, the 5 pillars are obligatory. The muallif says تجب الخمس على كل مسلم مكلف إلا حائض ونفساء. So he says that the salah is obligatory. Okay, tajib, wajib on every Muslim that is mukallaf. Remember I told you these words are going to keep popping up every chapter. So we said Muslim. So what about the non-Muslim? Is it obligatory on them? The non-Muslim, the murtad. Yeah, this is actually a long discussion in usul al-fiqh, the fuqaha. They said, are the non-Muslims actually mukallafeen? Yani, are they held responsible? Okay. Imam Shafi is one of those who said, yes, they are, because of the ayah, ما سلككم في سقر, in Surah Mudaththir. What does it say? Why did you end up in Saqar? Which is what? What is Saqar? Jahannam. ما سلككم في سقر. What got you in Saqar? What did they say? قالوا لم نكن من المصلين. Shafi says, well, they were, which means they had to do salah. And if they're in the Jahannam, they are probably ولم نكن نطعم المسكين وكنا نخوض مع الخائضين وكنا نكذب بيوم الدين. So someone might say, well, it's Muslims who are in Jahannam and then they're going to leave. But وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ. And we used to deny يوم الدين. So are they Muslims? Shafi'i says they're not Muslims because they said وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ. Does that make sense for everybody? So it's a strong opinion that they will be questioned. But what the Hanabil are saying here, it's not obligatory on them right now. Here in the life, it's not wajib for them because they're not Muslim yet. But they will be punished for not doing it in the hellfire, in the hereafter. طيب, so we say it has to be a Muslim, okay? And then he says mukallaf. Remember mukallaf? We mentioned this in the tahara. والمكلف هو البالغ العاقل. Okay, so the mukallaf, the one who's responsible, who has taklif on him. Who is he? He's the baligh, pubescent, aqil. Okay, pubescent meaning in the madhab, someone who had a wet dream, or someone who has pubic hair, or for the woman who has the menstruation or is pregnant. These are all signs of bulugh, of puberty. And they say if none of these show up, what happens? Does he stay like a kid for all his life? No. They say khalas, when 11:59 hits, midnight hits, and he's 15, khalas asbah baligh. He becomes baligh. If none of these signs show up, is this possible? It's possible. It's possible, but not so common. فالمكلف هو the baligh, the pubescent, العاقل. What does عاقل mean? Sane. ايش يعني sane? ايش يعني عاقل؟ sane. صح، غير مجنون. يعني the majnoon is not, he is not the one who cannot make an intention basically, cannot understand what he's doing, then it's not obligatory on that person. What about someone who just faints, مثلا, just faints all of a sudden? Because when we say غير عاقل, are we talking about short term or long term? ما رأيكم? What do you guys think? So he's talking about long term here. For the long term, غير عاقل is not. But if someone just faints right now, تمام. مسألة خلافية. يعني some said, well, while he's in a state of يعني unconscious, right? He's unconscious. Then he is not يعني obliged to pray. The madhab says he is. So when he's in a state of unconsciousness, when he wakes up, he prays that salah. As soon as he wakes up and he's back to his sanity, he prays that salah. I believe Ibn Taymiyyah is against that opinion. Like, and we try to here we're going to stick to the madhab, inshallah, except for a few masail. طيب, what about the woman who is in her menstrual cycle? طيب, she's a Muslim and she might be mukallaf. So the author, he says, إلا حائض ونفساء. So except the one who has hayd or the one who has nifas, right? So those, it's not obligatory for them, and they don't have to make it up, right? They don't have to make it up. Those, they don't pray. It's not obligatory on them. Who else? Yeah, and if someone, if prayer is done by an insane person, it's not valid. Why? Because we said he has no niyyah. A person who's majnoon, who's crazy, he cannot think, he cannot make a niyyah, then it's not valid because you need an intention. طيب, what about prayer done by a child? So the mu'allif, he talks about وَلَا صَغِيرٍ غَيْرِ مُمَيِّزٍ. So it's not wajib on the kid that is not mumayyiz. Who's the kid that's not mumayyiz? So we said the baligh is the one who's 15. But what happens between 1 and 15? Well, the Hanbali, they say for a child who reaches the age of 7, we call him mumayyiz. إيش يعني مميز؟ يعني يستطيع أن يميز بين النية. He can actually make a niyyah. A child who is 7, usually they can make a niyyah. So if a child is below bulugh, then his prayer is accepted. If he prays, he's 8 years old, and he prays, is his salah accepted? His salah is accepted. Is it wajib for him? It's not wajib for him, but it's accepted, if that makes sense. It's not wajib for him. When does it become wajib for him? When he reaches puberty. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So the ghair mumayyiz is someone who does not understand intention, worship, nor realizes the meanings. So a 6-year-old, you tell him salli, he'll follow his dad, or a little girl will follow her dad, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She's just following. So her salah is not really accepted. Tamam? And of course it's not obligatory for her. And it says here, child becomes mumayyiz at the age of 7 in the Hanbali madhab, even if she has not reached puberty. Now, if a child has become mumayyiz but has not reached puberty, then they still do not have to pray. We said it's not obligatory on them. Lakin, if they do, it will be considered a nafil. It will be considered a nafil. They do get rewarded for it, inshallah. They do get rewarded for it. Like the one who does hajj. We mentioned in hajj time, we talked about the child who does hajj but he's not baligh. Okay, does his hajj go to waste? No. His hajj is still accepted. And we have a hadith for that his hajj is still accepted as ibadah, but it's not his hajj al-Islam. So when he becomes baligh, he has to do hajj al-Islam. He still has to do the hajj that is obligatory for every Muslim. واضح so far? So we said it's obligatory on every Muslim who is mukallaf, pubescent and aqil. طيب, جميل. طيب, what about now the young boy? The whole question about when does the child have to pray? We have the hadith of teach your children what? As-salah. At what age? At 7, right? We have the hadith where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that you should teach your children as-salah at 7. And this is really important. And it doesn't really have to be like you have to go pray. You're not forcing them to pray. They don't have to pray at 7. But what does it mean by that? It means that you're encouraging them to pray. And subhanAllah, as long as the father is praying in the house, in front of the child, and the mother is praying in front of the child, those of you who have children, what happens? What happens? They will pray with you. Did you have to call them to prayer? Actually, subhanAllah, I don't know about you, but my experience is the child, at a young age, 7, 6, 5, 6, 7, even 4, 3, 4, they're easier to get to pray than the 12-year-old, 11-year-old. Tamam? They just come. As long as you're praying and they look up to you as a parent and you're with them, and you have a decent relationship with them, they'll just come and pray. And they'll get excited and they want to pray. And subhanAllah. For this is what's intended here. You're being an example for them, tamam, so that when the age comes, okay, then you don't need the hitting, because the hadith mentions after, right? And hit the child at 10. Tamam. Someone would say, what do you mean hit the child at 10? Well, most likely you don't need to touch them. And you don't need to do anything. As long as you're what? Being a role model. But why hit them at 10? Because now you're getting to the age where it's going to be wajib for them. طبعا ضرب غير مبرح. يعني it's just like it's not something that will bruise the child or anything like that. But you just kind of like does it have to be a physical hit? Punish them, take away the PlayStation, whatever it is, whatever works. Yeah, the hadaf, the ghaya here is that you get them to start praying, right? But like I said, if you are doing your salah at home and you're a role model, you most likely don't need to. You don't most likely don't need to. It says here, if the child has not reached puberty, the guardian is still commanded to do it. ففي الحديث we have here that it's a command. Yeah. والأمر يقتضي الوجوب in most times. Whenever there's amr, command form, imperative form in the hadith or in the Quran, usually it means al-wujub. For here, the parent is commanded to kind of encourage the child, right, to pray. So even though a non-pubescent child will not be sinning by abandoning the prayer, the guardian must still command him to pray. The child hasn't reached 15 years old or hasn't become pubescent yet. You still should command him as the parent, as the father, as the mother. Command them to pray. Command them to pray so they can get used to the prayer and they realize the seriousness of the prayer. And you don't wait until they're baligh, the night of the bulugh, they're like, yallah, you have to pray now. So khalas, now they're 15, 15-year-olds. Is it easy to convince any 15-year-olds here? Is it easy to convince a 15-year-old? It's not easy, right? How old are you? 12, you're almost there. Yeah, shift, huh? You can't even get a straight answer from them. It's not easy to convince, but if they're raised on it, tamam, then khalas, they automatically do it, and it's just a reminder for them. So that's why, but if a parent comes, parents come to the imams and they're like, oh, my son doesn't pray, he's 16. But did you actually did you apply the hadith? And they'll tell you, should I hit him? But wait a second, because some of the ulama, they'll discuss this. This hitting part is, did you actually do the first part? Did you actually command them and be an example for them? Okay, before you start hitting, because now the hitting might not work. Actually, it might give you an opposite result. Tamam. A parent comes and they're like, my child doesn't want to pray. Like, did you encourage them at the age of 7? Did you pray in front of them? No, Allah, I didn't. I wasn't home. I didn't pray much. I just started praying. But then we have a different problem. We need probably a different approach to it. Like, the mu'allif now says about delaying the prayer. Okay, he talks about delaying the prayer. He says here, وَيَحْرَمُ تَأْخِيرُهَا إِلَى وَقْتِ الضَّرُورَةِ إِلَّا مِمَّنْ لَهُ الْجَمْعُ بِنِيَّتِهِ وَمُشْتَغِلٍ بِشَرْطٍ لَهَا يَحْصُلُ قَرِيبًا. I'm going to try to read the Arabic this time. Maybe it'll be a bit more beneficial as well for the Arabic audience. He says here, it's haram to delay the prayer. إيش يعني? طبعا we know the hadith that أحب الأعمال لله الصلاة على وقتها. From the most beloved actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the salah at its time. يعني. And so the mu'allif here is talking about it's haram to delay the prayer until the time of necessity. What is the time of necessity? So the Hanabila, they say that there's 2 salahs that they have a time of necessity and time of tahrim. فصلاة العصر, okay, and there's hadith mentioning this. Salat al-Asr, طبعا Salat al-Dhuhr, you can pray it any time until before Asr, and it's fine, right? Like in Salat al-Asr, there's a time of tahrim. There's a time where it's haram to pray without an excuse, right? And we'll talk about the timings, inshallah, when the shade is double. Like there's a time that is permitted to pray, and it's recommended to pray, and there's a time that is haram to pray in, and then there's Maghrib. Okay? So let's say this is the time from Asr to Maghrib. There's a time that is permitted, there's a time that is haram, and then there's Maghrib Salah. Okay? So we have a person, مثلا, who prays in the recommended time, so his salah is good, and it's ada, yani he performed it properly. Then we have a person who prayed it from the time of tahrim to maghrib. That's also ada, but without an excuse, he's sinful. Then we have a person who prays it in the time of, prays asr in the time of maghrib. That would be qada, right? That would be qada, and he would be sinful for that. So he's saying here, it's haram to delay the prayer until the time of necessity. And also we have Salat al-Isha, and when we talk about the timings, Salat al-Isha also in the madhab is that you're supposed to pray it before the third of the night, or some say before the midnight. Okay, so it's recommended, or you have to pray it before the midnight, unless you have an excuse. So anytime after the midnight or after the first third, you're not supposed to pray Isha at that time. Then he says unless what? Unless he has an excuse. They mentioned two reasons. Unless he has an excuse to combine prayer due to travel or being sick. فالمسافر مثلا, the musafir, and when you're a musafir, you can pray, let's say it's dhuhr time, you can pray dhuhr and asr and dhuhr time. Agreed? Everybody agree? طيب. So, but the niyyah has to be that you're praying it early. تمام? Or he has the choice to pray dhuhr and asr in asr time. But he has to make the niyyah of ta'khir. And here specifically, why? Why they say you have to make a niyyah for ta'khir? Okay, طيب. So which means someone might have the rukhsa to pray late, but he misses dhuhr. He misses dhuhr from his shortcoming, and he says, you know what, khalas, let me just make the intention, right? That's not allowed. You're not allowed to miss the salah, okay, intentionally, and then basically say, I'm going to do jama' and qasr. And that's why they say you should make the intention. In dhuhr time, if you're going to pray dhuhr and asr in asr time, then make the intention of ta'khir. Make the intention that you're going to join them in the asr time. Okay? So he says here, this person has an excuse. He has an excuse to pray outside the time of dhuhr, as long as he's doing jama'. Tfaddal.
For the niyyah. So when I want to do like dhuhr and asr, that means I don't have time to do asr and dhuhr. So that means for example, I'm driving, I'm staying in the same place, right? But I only do dhuhr and asr. I'm staying, I'm not like...
You're not in the process of moving. You've now landed in your destination.
Yes.
Jameel.
But I want to do like jama'.
Yeah.
Asr and dhuhr and asr.
Together.
So that's, I have like the preference to do this or that, or I have to do...
لا هذه تسمى رخصة. And inshallah we'll get to that part in detail, but since you're asking, هذه رخصة, it's a concession. You can use it and you cannot use it. And usually what I say to people is, if you're in a masjid and you're with people, pray the jama'ah. مثلا you're in, especially like the most common scenario is when you go to Umrah. Are you going to do jama' qasr and then miss the jama'ah that's worth 100,000? لا, you pray with them jama'ah, and you're allowed to do that. يجوز لك أن تفعل هذا. Here it's there for the mashaqqa. It's there for the difficulty for the traveler. Like in situations like that, and you go to the masjid, you're in the place of jama'ah. And there's no mashaqqa for you, there's no difficulty for you, then there's no problem for you praying the actual salah with them. Wallahu a'lam. But we'll talk about that in detail when we get to jama' and qasr. So here he must make the intention, okay. طيب. Yeah, because he says here, if he misses dhuhr, okay, and he didn't make the intention to do jama' qasr ta'khir in the asr time, then it will be qada for him. Why? Because he didn't intend to do jama' qasr. فالنية is important here when you do jama' and qasr. نعم. في وقت الظهر. If you want to do it for تأخير, you do it in وقت الظهر. If you want to do it, if you want to do maghrib and isha in isha time, you do it في وقت المغرب. قبل ما ينتهي قبل وقت المغرب. نعم. طيب. He's saying here, praying during time of necessity without an excuse is valid but sinful. نعم. So we said in asr and isha, there's time where it's haram to pray in that time. Your salah is still valid, it's ada, it's performed in its time, but the person is sinful, right? There's a hadith explaining that. So that's why the person, especially in asr and isha, they should try to pray it early, bi'idhnillah. The other reason is if she is busy trying to fulfill one of the conditions of salah in a short time. What does that mean? We're going to talk about shurut al-salah, right? Shurut al-salah. From the shurut, who can mention a shart? مثلا covering the awrah, or يعني getting the, having a tahara and stuff like that. طب he's saying, what if someone is busy? يعني alhamdulillah, most of us don't have that issue, but let's say you don't have a thobe that covers your awrah, it ripped in half, and you only have one thobe. Yeah, this happens in other countries. Yani. Alhamdulillah, yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed most of us here that we don't have to deal with that. But let's say he needs to cover his awrah, because if your awrah is uncovered, you cannot salli, sah, you cannot pray. But let's say his thobe is ripped, okay, and he's busy like knitting his thobe or taping it, whatever he's doing. So he says if he's busy trying to fulfill one of the shurut of salah, okay, in a short, يعني في وقت قريب, okay, then he says ومشتغل بشرط لها يحصل قريبا. يعني it's something that's going to happen soon. It's not going to take like 4 salahs, but it's going to happen soon. So he's Asr time and he doesn't have something to cover his awrah. So he's like knitting, he doesn't have a machine, he's just like knitting. And then Asr time passes and Maghrib enters, okay? And then khalas, he finishes, alhamdulillah. He hasn't prayed Asr, he's in Maghrib time. So for that person, he'll be excused. Because of darura, he's excused for that. But if he knows that it's going to take him, mathalan, 3 salahs to do it, then he prays with his condition. He prays with his condition. We mentioned that in tahara, that if a person is not able to, mathalan, fulfill the condition of tahara, then he prays in his condition. I hope that makes sense. So here, if for someone who's trying to fulfill one of the shurut, right, and it's going to happen in a short time, even if he goes into the next salah, he's excused for that, for darura, for necessity, for a necessity. طيب. And of course we know that إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا, يعني the salah has a specific time for it, an obligated time. طيب. Now we talk about the important point here. تارك الصلاة. طبعا this is a huge discussion in fiqh. تفضل. You're in a place where you cannot perform dhuhr salah. It just depends on the reason. Like, are you in a place that's like dangerous? Are you in an operation? You're a doctor, or it's just like you're scared or shy. Like it, in Canada, you're not allowed to pray. So look. We don't have that problem in Canada, in the big cities. But let's say Quebec, so generally here in Canada, you have every right to ask for prayer time. Yeah, you have every right to ask for prayer time, and even for prayer space, by the way. mashallah, Adrian was here. Is Adrian here? I saw Adrian. Oh, there's Adrian, yeah. Yes, mashallah, Adrian, who, mashallah, accepted Islam over a year now, almost. Yeah, so him and Nick, in their school, they were able to get a prayer space, right away, and excused to leave class and pray. In most places, you're allowed to do it. Like I said, they give excuse for someone like a surgeon. Mathalan, he's a 5-hour whatever. He can do Jama' Qasr, for example. He can delay. He can do the niyyah of maybe praying it earlier or praying it after with another salah. There's a few people who have excuses. But if someone says, I'm shy, or I don't want to ask my boss, it might affect my promotion or something like that. We remind ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a razaq, and this is something that is wajib for you. And وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Take this as a rule in life. Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever is conscious of what Allah wants him to do, then Allah will find an exit for him. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. تمام. Take this as a rule. This is a rule in all these similar questions. That inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find a way for you. And when you respect the وَمَن يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ, whoever respects and honors the symbols and these acts of worship that of Islam, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is from the highest level of iman. you know, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find them a way. But like I said, there are people who might be excused. When I was in university, مثلا, I had a long exam and Dhuhr Salah was there. So some will tell you, if you cannot get out, no problem, you're excused. But even us, we were able to say, we need to go pray, right? But someone has to follow you, so we're not cheating, right? The supervisor has to follow you. There's ways around these things. Wallahu a'lam. طيب. The person who leaves the prayer, طيب. Meeting, like what kind of meeting? I think reasonably those meetings, usually you can excuse yourself for 5 minutes. Excuse yourself for 5 minutes, plan ahead of time, say I will need to leave, for 10 minutes during the meeting. It should be, for most cases it should be fine. Unless it's the person knows if it's darura or he's not able to. But for most of these things you can leave, Like if your wife calls, you probably leave. If your mom calls, you probably pick it up, right? No, it's not an excuse. Like a valid excuse would be something of necessity, شخص مضطر. Life or death, a surgeon. The surgeon can't be like, no. جزاك الله خير. Yes, mashallah, the messenger. A surgeon, مثلا, a surgeon, someone wrote me in Arabic, and the Arabic, الخط العربي, sometimes it's like the doctor, yes. What we were saying that, surgeon, life or death. You cannot tell the person, who has, time sensitive, just wait for me, we'll pray. خلاص مات, he might die, he might lose brain cells, he might. That's darura. Like for a meeting, client meeting, 5-10 minutes. Does anybody see that as an issue? Like if you tell them, if you have, أكرمكم الله, you have to go to the bathroom, you have diarrhea or something, you're not going to be like, no, this meeting is like, you're going to be like, خلاص تمام. طيب. The general rule, فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. This is the general rule. The Sharia is there for ease, but we know, as people, we know most of the time, we know what's right, what's a good excuse and what's not a good excuse. تمام. For someone sitting on the TV and it's a Champions League final, it's not a good excuse. That's not a good excuse. Where I'm in a movie and I can't leave. That's not an excuse. تمام. There's the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب, so let's talk about the person who leaves the prayer. جميل. طب ما رأيكم? I think Sheikh Adnan mentioned this last week, and this is an important mas'ala, and we don't want to stop on it too much, but I think it's important to understand the question that is being asked here. Okay, تارك الصلاة. What do you guys think? What's the hukm on that person? Okay, we have straight kufr. The person who leaves salah is a kafir. What other opinions we have here? Asi, طيب, he's a sinful person. This is why I wanted to bring this up. Let's make a difference. We need to make a difference between the one who rejects the obligation of salah. I want you to understand the difference. We have a person, he says, salah is not obligatory on me. Okay. Ijma', consensus, this person is a kafir. He's saying, I don't have to pray. It's not a pillar of Islam. He's denying from the fundamentals of, like someone who says, I don't have to do hajj. He's not saying I can't do hajj, or I won't do hajj because I want to go to Disney, but he's saying, I don't have to do hajj. Tamam? But here he's saying, he's changing the sharia. Right? He's changing the sharia. Someone who comes and says, riba is not haram. I'm not saying someone who buys a house and mortgage and he says it's okay. I'm saying someone who says, riba is not haram. Right? You hear sometimes people say, oh, Sheikh said it's not haram. He didn't say riba is not haram. He just gave you an excuse to buy a house, this alim. But anybody who says riba is not haram, then they have left Islam, because there's a consensus, ijma' on this, right? And same with someone who denies the salah, denies the obligation of salah. Someone who denies wujub al-salah, then he is agreed upon disbeliever. Does that make sense? طيب. Now we talk about the person who does not pray his prayer out of laziness or whatever. Right, let's talk about that person. So the one who does not believe that the salah is wajib becomes kafir immediately. We agree on that. طيب. The one who abandons the salah out of laziness. In the madhab, and the Hanabila are the strictest. Okay, so we're here, we're going to talk about the strictest opinion. Like even in their opinion, okay, look how many chances the person is given. And you have to understand here, we're talking about a person in a Muslim country. We're talking about a person in a Muslim country where, and this is a person who publicly does not pray. I'm not talking about the person who comes to the masjid, prays, and then when he's home he doesn't pray. That's not nobody's business. Nobody's going to follow him. It's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like in somebody who comes out and publicly doesn't pray. I remember I was in Damascus in 2007, in one of the Palestinian camps, and it was Salat al-Jum'ah, and Mu'adhin, the Khatib is he started already. I was late for the Salah. I'm going, and there's a guy, okay, Muslim, okay, baligh aqil, okay, male. So he's not on his monthly, he's sitting there and, his feet up and he's, argila, he's smoking shisha. And the khutbah is going on and the mu'adhin, this is Jum'ah, right? We're talking about that person. This guy is like, I don't want to pray, I don't have to pray. We don't know if he's saying, I don't have to pray, but he's lazy. He's sitting there. But what's the hukum on that person in a Muslim country? They say the one who prays out of laziness, he will become kafir with conditions. But what are the conditions? They say that the imam or one of the leaders will invite him, okay, to come pray. He'll tell him, طيب, they'll explain to him, as-salah, it's wajib. Why are you leaving it? Maybe he has a legitimate reason. Tamam? Maybe he's majnoon, maybe he's whatever. There could be a reason, صح? But they sit with him and they talk to him and they try to convince him. And then they tell him to pray. If he refuses, and one prayer passes, and then the other enters, and then that salah leaves, and he still doesn't want to pray, then they imprison him. He's kafir, he's imprisoned for 3 days. Then the ulama will come to him. He's in prison for 3 days now. Look how many chances. He's in prison now for 3 days. And then the alim will come to him again and remind him, salah, why don't you pray, Tamam? Even if a person doesn't want to pray, a logical person should do what here? Should do what? Hatta if he doesn't want to pray, he should do what? He should just pray. Sah? Because some people will come and say, Islam, barbaric, blah, blah, blah. Remember, and this is important to understand, the goal of the Sharia is to preserve the deen. Tamam? If people start going out in public and saying we don't have to pray, it's okay, what does that do for the most important pillar in Islam? It waters it down. People say it's not important. People now, the next generation grows up on something that's recommended. You know what I mean? For here, the Islamic State is trying to protect that. Now, the person can save his life and he can stay alive even if he doesn't want to pray. How? He just prays in front of the imam, okay? And then he goes home, khalas. Tamam? As long as he's publicly not showing that he doesn't pray. Just like the one who drinks khamr. He drinks khamr in his home. Is someone going to bother him? Hatta even the homosexual, مثلا. He does it at home. Is anybody going to bother him? Nobody's going to bother him. It says nobody can bother him if he does something in his own. Is this a translation? Can I get a French one too? طيب. Do we have to make the intention? I'll look at this in the inshallah. So we cover the material. Tamam? So if he refuses now, he will be killed. Imagine someone, he knows he's going to be killed, and he's still stubborn. He's like, I'm not going to pray. But just pray, just show that you're going to pray and pray. It really goes back to him. It really goes back to that person. If he wants to stay alive, he just... And this is an Islamic state, a proper Islamic state. طبعا here nobody does that. Here it's between the person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nobody really here can go around and say kafir, because this is the job of who? Of the qadi, of the ruler. So it really doesn't really apply for us here, but it's good to understand that, especially when this is brought up by non-Muslims or Orientalists. تفضل شيخ تفضل. صلى الله عليه وسلم. والله سؤال جميل الله أعلم. That's a good question. This ijtihad came from what? This is a good question. أحسنت. Great question. Who can answer the question? This comes from the hukum of the murtad, the kafir, the one who leaves Islam. He's someone who was praying. Remember they said العهد بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن ترك فقد كفر. And we know that the hukum of the murtad is al-qatl. يعني after they talk to him, and he خلاص, like, I don't want to be a Muslim and I want to show that I'm not a Muslim, then this is like treason. Just like here in Canada, in the US, someone who commits treason in some states, خلاص, they capital punishment, they kill him. تمام? It's a type of treason. And this is عادي in criminal law, but it goes back to al-murtad, the one who actually leaves Islam, because that's the one who intentionally leaves the salah and doesn't want to pray. زي المرتد, they consider him a murtad. نعم. Yeah, that's why I said here the madhab is very strict on this one. The Yeah, like I believe in some of the other madhab, they'll just imprison him for life. Imprison for life. It's something serious in an Islamic state for someone who says, I don't want to pray, and they tell him pray and he doesn't want to pray. It's because it becomes a fitna for everyone. And remember that the intention of the Sharia here is to protect the salah, right? Is to protect the salah. طيب. Jamil, one who prays sometimes. Someone who prays sometimes, and he just prays Jum'ah, or he just prays Eid, or so that person is still a Muslim, okay? Because he still has he still believes he has to pray. He prays sometimes, لكن he's a sinful person. يعتبر فاسق, someone who misses a lot of his salawat, and he's committing minor sin or major sin. It's a major sin. Someone who's missing his salawat without an excuse, it's a major sin. We'll talk about what are some of the excuses. Someone couldn't wake up for Fajr, or took a nap, and right, because we have even Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba, they missed a prayer. We have narrations of that, and there's excuses for that. As long as it's not something that keeps happening. But the mas'ala of the missed prayers. Let's talk about this one. Someone missed prayers. He comes and says, Sheikh, I haven't prayed for the last year. Huh? What? Oh, and I want to make it up. Now what do I do? We sit down with him, okay, and we get a calculator and we do the math, and how many for a whole year? How many salawat? Oh, you've done the math already. Someone already came to you. We're talking about like 256 days? What's the 356? 356. My brain is not working. 356, right? Times 5? 365 times 5. Who's done the math? Ish? Huh? 1825. So 1,825 prayers. Ya salam. طبعا we have to divide it by, we have to say how many rak'ahs, but it's a lot of salawat, right? The madhab here, he says that they believe that tawbah is not enough. Someone misses مثلا months of salah. They say that the person to make tawbah is not enough. This is a big mas'ala, there's a lot of ikhtilaf in it. Even Ibn Taymiyyah, who's a Hanbali, but he's like a mujtahid who sometimes goes outside the madhab. He says that no, the person doesn't have to make up all his salawat. He just starts praying and he makes tawbah, and he tries to do extra nawafil. And the common fatwa now in the modern day, right, is that if someone mathalan misses, like he just missed, like yesterday he missed Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib. As soon as he now remembers or he wants to pray them, he should pray them. He remembers. But when you get to a point where I don't even know how many, it's been months. Now, it's difficult to tell someone go sit down and pray them, because aslan he won't even pray them properly. It'll take him forever. He will. What makes more sense, wallahu ta'ala alam, and this is the common fatwa that's given by a lot of the scholars nowadays, is that the person does tawbah. He has to make tawbah because that's a major sin. Okay, does tawbah for that. And he continues with his salawat, his normal salawat. He sticks to it. And he tries to pray as many nawafil as possible. Understand why the madhab and others said that he has to make them up. Why? Anybody know why? If you understand why, you'll be a bit more sympathetic for the fatwa. Why they say that? Because of the hadith that says that the first thing that the person will be asked about is his salah. And then it says what? What's the hadith say after that? Yeah. If it's missing, right? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take from his nawafil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will what? Yani let's say he goes in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he's missing one dhuhr and one asr and one this and one that. It's up to be like 100. Why is it good to pray your nawafil, your sunnah? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fill the gaps with those sunnah, right? So they say, well, what if somebody comes and he's missing a lot of salawat, yani 1 year, 2 years, tamam? So then his other hasanat will not be accepted, and he's going to be end up in the hellfire. But that's why they say he needs to make them up. Okay? But the other group, they said, he doesn't know how many it is. So what we recommend him to do is make tawbah, okay, and then basically pray nawafil, so they can fill up the gaps for the other one. Another group said, well, let him just every time he prays a dhuhr, pray another dhuhr. Every time he prays a asr, pray another asr. Tamam? It's ijtihad. There's all of ijtihad. There's no real dalil for that. Like what's definitely for sure, the person has to make tawbah, right? And he should try to pray as many nawafil as possible, right? You imagine how many nawafil we pray a day. Yeah, and the recommended ones, the 12, taraweeh, all those things, inshallah, will cover for him, bi'idhnillah. Because the point is that he covers for all his salawat. Wallahu ta'ala. This is an important mas'ala, and a person, as soon as he kind of wakes up from his sleep, sleep his, you know what I mean? Then the person should make tawbah, go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and try to pray his salawat and try to do as many nawafil as possible. Any questions about that part? Someone's saying, what if they reach puberty under 7? Is that possible, Doctor? Is it possible? Huh? Never? طيب الله أعلم, if someone reaches puberty under 7, هل هذا معقول? I don't know. I mean, if they reach puberty, they reach puberty. لكن the earliest, I don't know. What's the earliest a male can reach? 10? 10? Okay. Yeah, فالله أعلم. 7 probably very rare. And girls, what's the earliest? I've heard 9, 9, 8. فحسب حسب الله أعلم. But if he reaches bulugh, then he's mukallaf. As soon as he reaches bulugh, he's mukallaf, right? But I think it's impossible for someone to be below 7 and reach bulugh. I think that's probably impossible. Maybe they got their birthday wrong. طيب. Do we have to make the intention for shortening, combining prayers before traveling? They're asking في المذهب المالكي. Allah أعلم. In the madhab al-Maliki, I'm not sure. You'd have to ask a Maliki for that. Allah أعلم. نعم. Yeah. You will automatically make the intention. I'm not sure about the Malik madhab, but in the Hanbali madhab, that if you're before traveling, you make the intention. You make the intention that you're gonna do Jam' al-Qasr, but the Jam' al-Qasr will go in detail, but you have to be in the state of travel. And some of them say, when are you in the state of travel? They say when you leave the last building of the city, مثلا. Okay? Or when the plane kind of leaves, or so when you're in the state of traveling, then you can do your Jam' al-Qasr. So for myself, when I want to travel, I'm in the plane. When the plane leaves, okay, and طبعا if the salah is the time of salah is there while I'm in Calgary, مثلا, I'll pray the salah that I can pray, and then مثلا this is a 14-hour flight. Then in the air, you will figure out the timings. You'll do some math, and inshallah, you make sure that you pray all the salawat that that have entered the time before you land in the next place. When we get there, inshallah, we'll talk about it. طيب, let's talk about the adhan and iqama. Any questions before we go to the adhan and iqama? تفضل تفضل. سؤال جميل. So in سورة الماعون, the famous ayah, فويل للمصلين. والويل is عذاب, right? الويل, some said it's a wadi في جهنم. It's like a valley in Jahannam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. فويل للمصلين. If you just stop there, that's a problem. Okay, but it's a warning for the musallin. Who? Which musallin? الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون. Sahun, يعني long tafsir on this one. But sahun are those who are negligent of the salah. They're lazy with their salah. They pray it يعني one time yes, one time no. Is this talking about the same person? يعني the صفات here are for the same person. الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون. الذين هم يراءون. المرائي is the one who shows off. الذين هم يراءون. الرياء is the one who shows off. تمام. فأكيد there's a punishment for the person, because the one who's showing off, and niyyah here is problem. Now we have a problem of the niyyah, the one who prays out of riya. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. And this riya is a shirk al-khafi, right? Is the hidden shirk, right? It's the one that comes and you don't even know it. SubhanAllah. You could be praying in the first line for 10 years and you don't realize you're doing it out of riya. Like one of the stories I read, this person, he was from those who prayed in the first line. SubhanAllah. And then one time he got sick or something, or he couldn't make it, and it came to his mind, oh, what are people going to say about me? But then he realized, SubhanAllah, all this time I've been praying out of riya, possibly. Allahu a'lam, يعني. Okay? So we have to be very careful with that. الذين يراؤون ويمنعون الماعون. Yeah, so those people who have all those attributes, أكيد they will get that place. Someone who has one of those attributes, is lazy with his salah, and فالله أعلم, but definitely a person who has all those, he's lazy with his salah, he doesn't care, he's careless with it. Okay? ما يهتم فيها ساهي بها. And the one who shows off in salah, because his salah won't be accepted aslan. The one who prays out of riya, tamam, his salah is not accepted. And those who يمنعون الماعون, they stop people from helping others, those who are in need. Tamam. A person who has all those three attributes, for sure, he's in big trouble. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. Excellent question, Jazakallah khair. Because that ayah comes up a lot. It's a warning for those who are lazy with their salah. فَوَيْلُ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Surah Al-Ma'un. طيب. We go to al-adhan wal-iqamah. Al-adhan. What time is Isha? 8:48, huh? الوقت is fast, huh? Moving back fast. طيب, Jamil. That's the adhan time. And we're going to talk about adhan now, inshallah. طيب. Al-adhan wal-iqamah. Al-adhan wal-iqamah. طيب. Obviously, let's quickly just look at the definition of adhan. What's adhan linguistically? A call. Yeah. We have the ayah, وَأَذَانُ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, right? In Surah At-Tawbah. Adhan, the call. If you know the story of Surah At-Tawbah, the beginning, بَرَاءَةٌ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. It was basically, the Prophet ﷺ sent Ali and other Sahabas to go tell the mushrikeen that you guys have numbered days to leave. If you're not going to accept Islam, you have to leave Arabia. Basically, it was like a warning, a call. Yeah, بَرَاءَةٌ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ الَّذِينَ عَهَدتُّم مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Those who had a covenant with them. فَسِيحُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. You have time to leave. Okay, you have 4 months to leave this land. So adhan is a call, right? Al-i'lam, a call. And technically, it's the call for the entry of the time of prayer. Very basic, So the adhan, when the adhan is called, is the call for the entry of the time of prayer, or its proximity for Fajr only. What do I mean by that? What does he mean by that? When the mu'allif says, he says here, الإعلام بدخول وقت الصلاة أو قربه لفجر فقط. Why Fajr? لقربه. قبل لقربه for its close time. Why Fajr? Huh? Yeah, so we know that from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they would call 2 adhans for Fajr. So they would call the adhan before the time, لقربه يعني, so that people can get up and have suhoor and you know. So that's what he means here, the muallif. When he mentions the definition, to call for the entry of salah, okay, or its proximity for Fajr only for Fajr. So nobody should get up and do adhan al-dhuhr before dhuhr, right? All the salawat you do it at the time, even Fajr you do it at the time, but you also do the one before so that people wake up. Do we need it nowadays? No. And that's why like in some masajid مثلا, even in the Jum'ah, they'll do 2 adhans, right? Because Uthman mentioned radiallahu anhu that you should do it for people to get ready for Jum'ah. But do people need to get ready for Jum'ah now? Like people know, khalas, people know that this is the time. People, 3 adhans. What's the third one for? You know, actually, subhanAllah, when I was in Al-Jazair, I think I noticed that. Yeah, naam. Yeah. What's the purpose? The third one? Huh? Inshallah, maybe one day we'll do a Maliki matan. Inshallah. Lots of Malikis here. طيب. The iqama. Al-iqama يعني is from the word aqama, يعني to establish or to and the technical meaning is i'lam, okay, بالقيام إلى الصلاة بقول مخصوص. Basically, the call to get up for prayer. The call to get up for prayer. So we have the adhan and we have the iqama. طيب, what's their hukum? This is what we're going to start with, inshallah. What's the hukum of adhan? Who can tell us? ما هو حكم الأذان? What's the ruling of adhan? Someone tells you, do we have to do adhan? What's the hukum of it? Is it recommended? Is it wajib? Wajib? Everyone agrees? On every person? Is it wajib on him and him and him and him and him and him and him? Because salah is wajib on every person. فرض عين. طيب وهذا الأذان. So all of us have to get up and do our own adhan? Fard kifaya. This is good. So al-fard kifaya is that as long as one person does it, then we're all relieved from it. Tamam? So if one day all the Calgarians say we're not going to do adhan, then we're all sinful. Understood? So if one day all the Calgarians say we're not going to do adhan, then we're all sinful. Tamam? As soon as somebody gets up and says we'll do that, alhamdulillah, then we're all. That's what fard kifaya means. Naam.
Do you have to hear it? So that means you have to hear it. If you're like somewhere you can hear adhan and they testify it and you have to do your adhan.
Do you have to hear it to know if it was made, يعني?
Yeah, it's just somewhere you can hear the adhan here, somewhere.
That's why you should just do it. يعني if you're in a masjid, مثلا. طبعا you can kind of assume that somebody made the adhan. But if you want to make the adhan, it would be recommended for you to do it. يعني just للتأكيد يعني مثلا. لكن here we know for sure the adhan is being made. Like, what are the chances that nobody makes the adhan in Calgary? Alhamdulillah, we have lots of masjid. If there was only Southwest Masjid, and this is like, I don't know who was here when it was built. Maybe anybody was here when the Southwest Masjid was built? We're all like new. So if you were here, مثلا, when the first masjid here, مثلا, Southwest Masjid, or maybe the one before that, the church that they had in Forest Lawn, then yeah, maybe that time, you want to make sure. But now we have so many masajid, the adhan is being called for sure. You don't have to hear it to make sure. Here, you could almost yaqinan know that it was made. But that's why it's always recommended to do it. And even we have the hadith. Maybe it would have been smart to include that. But you guys know the hadith of the person who gets up in the middle of or he's in the field and he does the adhan. Anybody familiar with the hadith? He does the adhan, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is having a conversation with that person. Maybe we'll mention that in the next session. Yeah, it is highly recommended for you to do it, even if someone else did it. That's why we always call the adhan. So it's okay. Who's it fard on? But what about the woman? Do the women do adhan? No. طيب. So يقول المؤلف it's فرض كفاية. تمام. الأذان والإقامة farda kifaya. So both of them are fard kifaya, right? It's a communal obligation. على الرجال, the men, الأحرار المقيمين للخمس المؤدات والجمعة. So he says that they are fard kifaya on the men, right, who are resident. Resident إيش يعني؟ عكس مسافر. So the resident is the one who's not traveling. So is it wajib on the traveler? You go to Edmonton? No, you're good. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so all the Edmontonians say we're not going to do adhan, then you're not sinful. All of them are sinful except you, because you're not a muqim. You're not a muqim. So, but it's recommended for them to do it. طيب, al-hur, free. It has to be free. What if you're a slave? If you're a slave, it's not wajib for you to do it. But if they do it, it's valid. If they do it, it's valid. And then number 4, okay, for the 5 prayers and Jumu'ah. So it's called the adhan and the iqamah. They are called for the 5 prayers and Jumu'ah. طيب, what about qada? The made up salah. ها؟ في سؤال؟ تفضل. It's like literally the next slide. It's the next slide, inshallah. Abshir, it's coming. MashaAllah. What do you say on Hayya ala Salah, right? Is that your question? Yeah, it's coming, inshallah, it's coming. So, what about the qada prayers? Yani, let's say you missed a prayer and you want to make it up. Al-qada is to make it up. Do you need to do adhan? Huh? La, you don't have to make adhan, right? You don't have to make adhan. It's not wajib for you. But if you do it, ما في مشكلة يعني. But it's not wajib for the qada because the time is already gone, and the whole point of al-adhan is what? Is to call the prayer. Tamam? So we said again, for the men, the resident who is free, for the 5 prayers and Jum'ah. That is the ruling for adhan and iqamah. طيب. It's not wajib for him. No, I said it's not wajib for him, but it's تصح. يعني مش واجب عليه بس تصح. يعني if he does it, it counts. يعني he's basically got us all off the hook. Yeah, but it's not wajib for him, so he wouldn't be sinful. يعني ما يكون آثم إذا العبد ما أذن. يعني if all of us, مثلا if one of us had a slave, okay, Muslim slave يعني, and all of us didn't do the adhan, we're all sinful except him, because it's not wajib for him. He's, so that's one of the perks. يعني, I guess for being in that situation. طيب, we continue with the conditions. So the adhan and the iqamah are valid only with the following conditions. So you have to, there are some rules when doing the adhan and the iqamah. So you have to do the proper wording, right? You cannot say, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu. You cannot mix the wordings. They have to come exactly the way they came and the way they were narrated, right? We have narration of 2 Sahabas who had the dream about the adhan, and they came told the Prophet ﷺ, right? And the Prophet ﷺ told them, and then the Prophet ﷺ told Bilal to do it, and there's a specific way to do it. So the order of the wording has to be there. Continuity has to be there, right? So he says here, وَلَا يَصِحُّ إِلَّا مُرَتَّبًا مُتَوَالِيًا مَنْوِيًّا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ مُمَيَّزٍ عَدْلٍ وَلَوْ ظَاهِرًا. Okay? So it has to be said in the proper order with continuity. And you cannot say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and then you check your phone and you start texting, and then you shouldn't do that. Right? Just like we talked about wudu, right? There has to be a continuity, right? And niyyah, you need the niyyah to do the adhan and the iqamah. It has to be from a male. It has to be from a male. So a female does not do adhan or iqamah. So what happens if there's a bunch of women they want to pray? They just they just get together and they do their salah. They don't have to do iqamah or adhan. طيب, can a mumayyiz boy do the adhan? Tamam, we have some mumayyiz boys, right? Some boys who are under 15, but they can make the intention, right? So can one of them make the adhan? Yes. Yasih minhum, as long as they can make the intention and it's valid. right? And it's valid for them. But they wouldn't be sinful, right? If all the adults decided not to do it, and he didn't do it, then he wouldn't be sinful because it's not wajib for him. He's not a rajul. Remember, we said it's wajib on the rijal, fard kifaya on the rijal. Cool? Type. So the order has to be there, the continuity, the intention, and has to be from a male, even if it's a mumayyiz. We said mumayyiz, someone who's at least 7 years old. At least 7 years old. Type. Number 5, it should be done after time for the, obviously you cannot do the adhan for Isha, so now we can do the adhan for Isha in a few minutes. Well, it's already in. But what if we did the adhan for Isha 8:45? Okay, لا تصح. It would count. You would have to redo it. You would have to redo it. And I remember it happened a couple of times in Riyadh. The muaddin, I don't know, he had someone messed up his watch. He got up and made the adhan, and then people were like, oh, it's not even time. And so he had to get up and do it again. You have to get up and do it again. تفضل سؤالك. It has to be what, like in the same wording, in the same.
Yeah, like what's those?
So a lot of this is ijtihad qiyas. Okay, so they'll tell you this is ibadah. It came that way, and we have to do it that way. Yani it's a ibadah. Okay, it came that way. Yani it's an act of worship that came exactly that way. And yani unless you have an excuse or a way or a dalil to change it, you wouldn't be allowed to change it. It's a ibadah that came that way. مثل Salah, yani. It came that way. You cannot come and someone can't come in and change it. So they do qiyas on other things, analogy on other things, and they say yani it has to be done. Which one specifically is yani you're not? Mm-hmm. Or if it's valid from them. Yeah, if they get it from some narrations. When the Prophet ﷺ or the Sahaba, someone young would do the adhan or call the adhan. Or they do qiyas on other things, on other ibadat. Right? And here the main reason is an-niyyah. Right? So they look at all the shurut and all the conditions. As long as the person has niyyah and he's a boy that understands, مثل Salah and مثل Hajj. Right? So sometimes they'll get a narration from Hajj that the Prophet ﷺ says that his Hajj is valid. Okay? And they'll say, khalas, we'll do qiyas from that analogy, okay, on adhan. And we'll do analogy on salah, right? And this is the agreed upon, the fourth agreed upon tool for rulings, right? We said al-Quran, wal-Sunnah, wal-Ijma' wal-Qiyas, analogy. So that's how they use analogy many times, right? So a lot of this is ijtihadi, and that's why you'll find sometimes ikhtilaf. Yeah. Because even al-Qiyas is one of the hardest chapters in usul al-fiqh. Because al-Qiyas has a lot of conditions, and sometimes it can be used inappropriately. But maybe one day we'll do an usul al-fiqh book. Inshallah, you'll see the difficulty of using Qiyas. Lakin, it's an accepted dalil. The fifth condition, so we said that there's 4 conditions before, right? Has to be the order, continuity, intention from a male. The fifth condition is it should be done after the time for the prayer enters, right? It has to be after the time. But what if it's 10 minutes after? No problem. As long as it's after the time, right? Except for Fajr. We said Fajr, why? Because Fajr, it has 2 adhans, one before, right? To remind people to pray tahajjud or eat suhoor. Usually it's done in the middle of the night for people who want to do suhoor or tahajjud, right? And then there's another one after the time comes. So Fajr, usually they make the adhan. Here, the adhan doesn't leave the masjid aslan. There's no point for one of you to come here before Fajr and do the adhan and then do another adhan. There's no point of that, right? There's no point to do that because the whole point of it is to wake up the people. The mu'adhin, who can be mu'adhin? Here, we don't have an appointed mu'adhin. Some masajid have. We don't really have one here. But in a Muslim country, the ruler will pick a mu'adhin. When I was in Riyadh, every masjid has a mu'adhin picked. And the mu'adhin gets a house next to the masjid. The imam gets a house next to the masjid. And if the mu'adhin is not there, the imam does the adhan, right? But that's his job. He has to do can it be anybody? Can it be anybody? Anybody? No conditions for him? We can pick any random. And then khalas. تفضل. He has to be from Maghrib.
What if both the imam and the mu'adhin, they lose their voice?
Then you can do the adhan. then any other person. يعني, but in an Islamic يعني country, if there is an appointed person, he should be left to do it. But if they are not there and they don't do it, then somebody gets up and does the adhan for them. Usually now they'll just WhatsApp him, like, listen, I'm late and the imam is late. Okay, you're like the third person. Khalas, you do it for us. Usually there's a, يعني, they already went through the problem and they figured out a solution. نعم تفضل. Huh? لا, you have time inshallah. What time is it now? 8? Yeah. Just so we're almost done. But the condition of the mu'adhin. So in the books of fiqh, they have conditions for the mu'adhin. يعني it has to be someone who's righteous, upright. ليش? Why it has to be someone who's righteous and upright? Back in the day, مثلا, he would get up where? He would get on the, يعني all the way on the top, صح? طب what access does he have? He can see the houses, يعني there might be people who are not dressed well, hijabs are taken off. He has to be someone who's trusted, who's ameen. Not someone who's going to be like, even some countries they still do it. Nowadays, the mu'adhin is in the masjid and there's speakers. But in some countries they still have it, right? Like they go up all the way on the top and he does the adhan. But he can see people's roofs, there might be an aura or something. So he has to be someone who is trusted, ameen, right? Upright, someone who avoids major sins. He can't be someone who's an alcoholic. Publicly he's an alcoholic and he's going to go do adhan. Yeah, it's not something that would be accepted. And someone does not insist on minor sins, they say. And even if he does minor sins, but he's not someone who insists on them. Okay, and he's always doing minor sins, because we know that when you do a minor sin consistently and you're okay with it, it becomes a major sin. Because now you're making it okay to sin. Number 4, he respects the urf of the people. Okay, someone who is acceptable, a role model. Do we have to go investigate in his house? And لا خلاص, as long as outwardly he's a righteous person and he doesn't do these things, we don't have to investigate. We don't have to put someone to follow him and check, right? Because that's not our job to check on his private. And like I said, usually the ruler or the people of the masjid, they will choose this person to be the mu'adhin. What are some of the sunnahs for the mu'adhin? So it's recommended that the mu'adhin has a nice voice. Where do we get this from? And a loud voice. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he could have chosen anybody, but he chose Bilal. Why? Because he had a loud voice and he had a nice voice. Tamam? In a masjid, if you have someone who has a really nice voice and someone who has a really painful voice, we should ask the one who has a nice voice, because you're calling people to salah. You're not, you want people to come to the salah, not leave the salah, right? I remember in our jami'ah, subhanAllah, sometimes this happens in masajid. There was the mu'adhin who's been there for 30 years. Tamam? بلغ الكبر. He's really old man, and his voice was like it wasn't okay. It was painful to hear, right? But nobody wanted to tell him, I guess from the masjid, that and there one time he was not there and somebody made it, and it was so beautiful, and it was the biggest masjid in Riyadh. Our university has the biggest masjid in Riyadh, and it's huge. And this person, Jazakallah khair, may Allah reward him, but he shouldn't be doing the adhan, because you're calling the whole, all the colleges, all the people for adhan, and you have this voice that, it's not like an okay voice, it's a painful voice. And this is not from the sunnah. It is not from the sunnah, right? It's not from the sunnah to have someone with a bad voice. And same thing with salah, right? Same thing with salah. As long as you put someone who has the conditions. Tamam? But if the only righteous person is the guy with the horrible voice, then we're stuck with him. We're stuck with him. And there's nothing against that person. This is something Allah gives to people. This is something Allah gives some people, and He doesn't give other people. Yeah, it's not. This is rizq. This is something Allah gives to some. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. Has to be trustworthy. The mu'adhin obviously. Knows the times of prayers. And he knows how to determine the times of prayers. We'll talk about from the shurut, inshallah, next week. There's ways to determine the times of prayer. From the sun. With a stick. Inshallah, maybe we'll bring it to demonstrate. But there's ways. He should be able to determine the times of prayer. Nowadays, I guess he has a watch. What if the watch breaks? What if the electricity goes out? طيب. If a person is joining prayers or making up a group of prayers, the sunnah is to do the adhan for the first prayer only and iqama only for the rest. Yeah, so if you're musafir, مثلا, you want to pray dhuhr, asr, do you do adhan for both? No, do one adhan and then iqama for each one. واضح? Yeah, if someone forgot prayers and he has to pray مثلا 3 salawat, one adhan is sufficient. Even when sometimes we join for snow or rain, we do one adhan and then we do iqama for each one. واضح at this point? Yeah, you do the iqama for each. Yeah, يعني the adhan here, it would be recommended. It will not be wajib. يعني assuming that somebody made it in the masajid, it wouldn't be wajib for you. inshallah. كان في سؤال؟ تفضل. Can the imam do the adhan? Yeah, ما في there's no haraj. There's nothing that stops him from doing it. يعني he can do the adhan, the iqama, the salah, the كل شيء. Like usually they have someone يعني specific for that. And in the Muslim countries, they give him a salary. Yani. He has a salary to do that and a house. Like, it's not bad to be a mu'adhin. But yani, some people think it's an easy job. You have to be there. Yani, ما في deer foot, traffic. Yani, you got to be there, you got to be there. That's why they give him a house next door. So he has no excuse. Yani, you open your door, you go straight and you do the adhan. طيب. From the sunnah is to repeat the words of the mu'adhin. Right? Right, in a low voice, not a loud voice, right? Except now, the question that was asked, when he says, "Hayya ala salah," yeah, hawala, they call it hawala. Hayya ala salah. The short, they call it al hawala. Hayya ala salah. What do you say? You say la hawla wa la quwwata. Okay, you say al hawqala. They call this hawqala. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, right? And then what about in Fajr when he says as-salatu khayru min an-nawm, that salah is better than sleep. Here's where the madhab and this is ijtihad, and even the dalil here is not very strong. They use istihsan, and istihsan is like when you see something that it's good to do. Yani, so they say when he says as-salatu khayru min an-nawm, you say صدقت وبررت. تمام? It's just basically saying that you have spoken the truth, right? And you have said something good. And really, if you think about it, there's no dalil for that. And that's why the second opinion is you just repeat what the person says, the mu'adhin says. And the third opinion, you say both. You say الصلاة خير من النوم صدقت وبررت. But if you say الصلاة خير من النوم, and another opinion is that you just you don't say anything. Okay? The choice is yours, but you can say as-salatu khayru min an-nawm, and that's fine, inshallah. That should be fine for tathweeb. They call it tathweeb. Naam. And the last thing, in iqama, and this is another one of those narrations that doesn't really have dalil. طبعا, what's the dua that we do after al-adhan? Allahumma رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعث من مقام محمود الذي وعدته. And then you can say إنك لا تخلف الميعاد, no problem. There's another narration, إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. That's fine to say, inshallah. Tamam. So this is something that's recommended, and inshallah, by saying this, that you're making dua that Allah gives the Prophet al-maqam al-mahmud on the day of judgment, then you will earn the shafa'ah of the Prophet inshallah. So that's why it's highly recommended to say this dua. And if you don't know it, read it for a week. You'll have it memorized, inshallah. Read it from the phone, right? Inshallah. And then you can say any dua after that. We're done. We're pretty much done. It says here, adhan is better in reward than iqama and leading the prayer. There's a hadith that mentions that adhan is better in reward than, and we know that the mu'adhin will have the longest necks in the day of judgment, and that's something that's praiseworthy. And naam, I think that's yeah. So what happens when the adhan is called? This is an important point I want to mention. If the adhan is called and you're in the masjid, can you leave? Who says you can? Yes? Ya salam. طيب. So, it is haram to exit the mosque after the adhan and before the salah without an excuse. Tamam? So a legitimate excuse, the adhan is called and your wife's in labor, like you gotta go. You gotta go. Tamam? Huh? You didn't know about it until then? if you're طبعا if you're in the masjid and you know you have a job interview, يعني the adhan is called, you pray and you go. يعني if you cannot wait till the iqama, لا بأس for that inshallah. لا, it's haram to leave in the madhab. It's haram to leave without an excuse, right? يعني the adhan is called and انت ما عندك عذر. You just want to, it's like, I don't know, I want to go get a coffee and طبعا with the intention of not returning. But we have narrations where the Sahaba would leave and come back for the salah, right? So excuses that allow a person not to go for jama'ah or jum'ah, intention should be to return to any jama'ah. You have the intention to come back, right? I think that's all I wanted. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. I was going to talk about some types of wajibat, but inshallah we can cover that in the next. We have what, like 10 minutes till iqama. We can take a question or two, inshallah, if there's any questions, and then we'll do the adhan and if anybody needs to make wudu. Any fi su'al, any questions? If he has to leave, right? He has to leave, and if he has a good excuse to leave, then he should leave. And there's no. But if he doesn't have a reason to leave, he should wait for the jama'ah. Because we're going to get to the Hanbali opinion that Salat al-Jama'ah is wajib. Salat al-Jama'ah is wajib with conditions. We'll talk about the conditions, but that's a premise that they have here. Is it quite long now, you mean? In the past, they would wait for the Imam, which was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the time, and his house was right there. But they would wait for him. Not like us. We're like kind of, we're like, not here. Khalas. We'll talk about that, inshallah. I think there's flexibility in the Sharia, I think every masjid should have their kind of, rule of thumb, we can discuss that, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. But, yeah. Any other questions? Tfaddal.
How long time should be between Iqama and Takbiratul Ihram? Because is it Sharia sometimes when the Iqama left, when it's again like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, then some people say you have to repeat again before.
لا, as long as there's no infisal. As long as there's nothing to cut it. You made the iqama, let's say you made the iqama and then مثلا there's a fire alarm and you guys leave and you come back, something interrupted it. But it's like you're all lined up, someone made the iqama, you're all lined up, and then the imam says, oh, by the way, car T52 is blocking the high, go get it. It's not recommended to do that, but if that's done, it's okay, the iqama has been made, inshallah. Does that make sense? As long as there's no long period of you have to stay. There's a threat. Should you break your salah? That's a good question, inshallah. It's going to come up when we talk about the salah. Lakin, what do you guys think? Huh? This guy, faqih. See, he says, obviously. For your life, you have the excuse to leave the salah. If your life is in danger. Huh? And this is not something unrealistic. It happened. It happened in Australia just when the crazy guy came in and shot all those people who were praying. Tamam? Something realistic, something like can happen, an earthquake or مش عارف ايش or something dangerous. A snake comes in front of you. Someone said snake. If a snake comes in front of you, or a wasp, I don't know. Is that a good excuse? You just say you just say your adhkar. I don't know. We'll talk about it, inshallah. Is your life in danger from a wasp? No. Is your life in danger from, unless you're like someone allergic that might like snake? if I don't know if it's poisonous. قد يكون الله تعالى. طيب بارك الله فيكم. Inshallah we'll continue next week. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.